Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
Is Kamala Harris authentically black? It seems on the surface a ridiculous question to ask about the Democrats' newly selected running mate for Joe Biden. After all, she is clearly a woman of color, but not a descendant of American slaves, a surprisingly crucial distinction among the woke left-wingers now holding sway over the Democratic Party, as evidenced by the selection of Senator Harris over more moderate politicians. Here to help us understand how the issue of the heritage and authenticity of Kamala Harris is likely to play with voters in the general election is our old friend, LibertyNation.com socio-political correspondent, Jeff Charles. Jeff, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me back on.
Always a pleasure. Now, Jeff, it seems personality was the largest issue of Kamala's own presidential campaign. Even as she entered the race with great fanfare, she ultimately appeared unrelatable to Democratic voters who soundly rejected her. How can a thing as large as personality be fixed to make her an asset to Joe Biden?
Yeah, I mean, her personality, or I should say her lack of a personality, really cost her during the Democratic primaries. That along with other issues as well. But I think that it in some ways it may appeal to some people who maybe want somebody who's more of the safe, laid-back choice. Politics has become very tumultuous in America. So, I mean, a lot of people believe that Biden has this appeal of a return to normalcy. So her not so bombastic personality, it's possible. I'm not saying that it will, but it's possible that with some people who want more of a safe choice, it might appeal to them.
Well, I have to say a return to normalcy might be the best sort of fundamental campaign strategy for Joe Biden to push. Whether it's normalcy or just a return to the old days of the establishment depends on the perspective. But Kamala appeared confused about her own campaign agenda, presenting as a tough on crime prosecutor one day and a social justice warrior the next day. And when she was pinned down on tough issues, instead of taking a stand, she often said, "We need to have a conversation about it." Is it legitimate to say that that confusion may extend to her own heritage as part Jamaican and part South Asian?
It could, but I think what's really going to matter more is whether people can convince the public that she has actually used her mixed heritage for political purposes. I mean, when she was sworn in as a senator, she wasn't talking about how black she was. She was talking about how she was the first Indian American senator from her state. So there is talk in Twitter and on the airwaves about how she'll use her blackness when it's convenient for her, but when she doesn't need it, she'll hype up more of the Indian side. And to be fair, that's something that a lot of people who are mixed race have to deal with. She wasn't picked to appeal to the black community. She was picked to appeal to white liberals.
Absolutely. That's the most profound point that you could make during this whole interview. But we're going to carry on anyway, because there's other things to discuss. You know, Jeff, it's noteworthy that the one short-term success that Kamala had as a presidential candidate was actually attacking the man who just picked her as his running mate, Joe Biden, for being a de facto racist by opposing one of the most unpopular experiments in American history, forced busing back in the 1970s. Why didn't that get her more traction among black primary voters?
I think precisely for the reason that you just said. It wasn't a very popular policy to begin with. On top of that, I mean, at that point during the race, it wasn't really possible to pin a charge of racism on Joe Biden. Nobody actually believed that he was. Now, with some of the remarks that he has made since then, people can make that argument a little bit more. And we've talked about this before. I think that's going to cause a lot of black people to stay home. But realistically, that wasn't really going to take him out. And then after Tulsi Gabbard brought up something that was worse that Kamala Harris did as Attorney General, that's what knocked her out. So, I mean, I think it was an effective attack in that it elevated her a little bit, but it was never going to knock Joe Biden off.
So until Tuesday of this week, the race was Trump versus Biden. Now it's Trump versus Biden and Harris. And while VP candidates don't often make a difference, she is bound to, because given Joe Biden's decline, shall we say, few people expect that he could make it even through one term. So a lot of attention is going to be focused on this woman. So all in all, do you see Kamala strengthening or weakening the Democratic ticket?
Yeah, so that ties back into the point that I made before. Kamala Harris was not picked to appeal to Black people. I mean, the Black vote's already going to go to Joe Biden. Like I said, there'll be some that stay home, but the ones who do go to the polls are going to vote for Biden mainly. So Kamala Harris is for a key voting bloc that Trump is struggling with right now, and that's white suburban women. And I've seen that here in Texas. Like he's kind of losing a lot of them, and he's trying to do things to get them back. But Kamala Harris appeals to white liberal, especially white liberal women who really won't care about her background as far as prosecuting and locking up Black men for marijuana charges, because a lot of them like to virtue signal that they care about that stuff, but in reality, they don't care. She's more of a safe choice for them. She's more of an opportunity for them to virtue signal and say, yeah, I support Kamala Harris. She's a Black woman.
On that note, Jeff, many fine points you made. Thanks so much again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.